Okay, so this is the beginning of lesson 4, and when we left off the last time, we had just imported that whole massive database, created that FDID2 variable, and we had asked SPSS to identify all the incidents related with that laundry list of stations associated with the 50 counties that we were interested in. So we got a database that looked something like this. This is essentially the sample, the raw sample that we're going to use for the analysis. And so if we page all the way down to the bottom, like we did before, we should have that 281,166 observations. Now we're going to go through and we're going to start the process of creating our dependent variable. And I'll show you how that's done in a little bit, but one thing I wanted to do is show you some evidence of potential problems in the database. And we're going to use this particular variable, incident type. And so incident type is perhaps the most important set of coding in this, and it ranges from 100, which is fires, 200, which is overpressures and ruptured, 300 level series are rescue and emergency management, 400 are hazardous conditions, 500 service calls, 600 good intent calls, 700 false alarms, 800 severe weather, and 900 special incident type. And within those 100 to 900 sequence, they have all these subunit numbers. So there's 412, which is, let me look it up real quick. 412 at the very top is gas leak, natural gas or LPG, excludes gas orders with no source found, etc. And so let's go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics. Actually, you have to click on and go over. I'm just interested in the frequencies of the coding on that particular variable, and so I've already got it in there. But over here, you'll go down, there's the very top, and we'll find incident type. We'll move it over, display frequency tables, and click OK, and so it'll run. So when I looked at this, like the 100 series is for fires. Right? And so if you look, what you have is you've got about 5,000 just generic fires, and then you have incidents of coding in that range of the 100s, right? And so same thing happens when you get to 400 series, which are hazardous conditions, no fire, and so you've got to have 8,000 kind of generic ones there. And then you have, of course, 410s all the way down through. These are the two primary categories. So essentially, with these big 50 counties, we're really recording only fires and hazardous conditions, no fires. We don't have any 200 series, which is overpressure ruptures. We don't have 300, which are rescue and emergency medical services. I think those are because those are reported separately. These are counties all big enough to have their own emergency management services. And so it's basically 100 and 400 series. But because we have this kind of over number in the 100 generic, we have to be a little bit we have to question whether everybody's using the refined coding scheme or not. It doesn't really appear so. So we would pretty much be forced to use the bluntest measure. So the difference here could be 100s and 400s and maybe 600s, and we don't have too many of those, and just a few 500s, which are service calls. Okay. So from the variable coding, we can tell there's probably a little bit of coding error, at least in this incident type measure. And to keep things simple for this first project, I'm just going to use the number of reported incidents. So we're not going to care about the particular incident type. We could narrow this down to fire or any number of those kind of coded areas. But for now, we're just going to take the aggregate number of incidents, no matter what the incident type was. To do that, let's go ahead and use the Analyze menu again. We're going to select Analyze. We're going to select Reports. We're going to select Case Summaries. And here I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to take just the incident number. We could take any of the quantitative variables over. And I'm going to ask it to report the number of cases, right? So it's going to just report the number of valid entries that we have in terms of that incident number. Right? I don't need to look at these, but I do need to group them on our FDID2 variable. So we're just interested in the number of reported incidents, and we got that from the number of cases. Right? And we're going to be interested in that expressed by each of those FDID2s, those station identifiers. So let's click OK and run the report. And so you'll see here for Arizona 08041, we had 48 instances, right? For California 19105, we had 9,000. That must be a really big set. Or that may be an aggregate category. Others down here, you get the sense, go all the way down to Wisconsin. So that is going to be the beginning of our dependent variable. Okay, so we have this data here, the case summaries, the account variables for each of those stations. And so what we want to do is we want to take this and export it into a format where we can use it. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click export. I'm going to do selected, which will just be this file. I'm going to set it as the 2007, oh, don't do that. Set it as the 97 through 2004 XLS. You guys are going to be using SPSS 17, and it doesn't like the XLS X, the newest version of Excel, likes the older version. I'm going to put it on the desktop, and I'm going to call it pols6123-ST for, I don't know, count, station count. Okay, save it. I'm going to click OK. And it ran there, and so I should have a new file out on the desktop. Let's minimize, and lo and behold, we've got a new value out here. But I want to show some things to you. This, as it's currently constituted, it doesn't really work yet. This would not be something that I could import directly into SPSS, which I will need to do. So I need to, first of all, get this in the proper format. So let's click the whole spreadsheet. Let's get rid of all the borders. Let's delete these top two rows. So we just start with our first variable name and our second variable name, and then we have our data that allow us to import it very well. And make sure you do this last step because it's really important. At the very bottom, you have a row in there for totals, right? And that's the 281,166 number that we initially started with, right? But if you import it like this, it will cause you a problem. It'll create an entry for that. So we need to delete that last one. Okay. Now notice we have, once we have the header row, we have only about 422 stations, and we originally had 507. So at least some of those stations within that original data, within that original database, didn't have any reportings, at least in this 2012 edition. And so we want to have a sense of that. So let's go ahead, and we've cleaned this up. We've made it possible to import it into SPSS. So let's just save it. We'll save it as it was. I'm going to get rid of it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open two Excel sheets into SPSS, and then I'm going to merge a set of variables into the other one. Okay, I'll show you how to do that in just 1 minute.